Hey, it's day 38 and it's a screenwriter's journey. And yesterday, as I recall, I finished a draft and then I immediately went right back and was making changes, which I had commented at the time is kind of typically unusual. But now it's day 38 and I'm right back at it. And again, this is not necessarily 38 consecutive days of writing. In fact, I know it isn't. But it's hopefully I never skip more than a day or two, maybe three sometimes. I guess I could look at the dates that I save my files under. This is June 6th that I wrote this. All right, where are we? Looks like some cosmetic changes here. Um, one of the few perks. So Lexi perceives that as a dig toward her. And so she's trying to kind of raise herself in Holly's estimation, we might say. So I'm trying to figure out a good way to say that. Yeah, that I can already tell you that I don't see this making it into the next draft. You can see it's the third try I've had at it. Obviously, the point of dialogue obviously is not to say what's on the surface, but ideally what's under the surface and the old subtext, and that's the not really the holy grail because people do achieve it, but it's definitely a goal of good dialogue is to say at least one thing, obviously, but two or three is even better. So I don't know that does it, but I think my thinking was that Lexi is always sort of testing Holly because she's wondering, did you do this strictly because it was your job, it's your duty, it's responsibility? At any point did you feel any emotional connection? Obviously, she's not going to come out and say that, I don't believe, but that is kind of my thought behind Lexi is kind of looking for validation, I think you could say. So a little tweaking here in the other car that's trailing. They can't obviously go as fast. Well, I guess they could if they'd probably get caught, but they are way far behind. And then there's some tension in there. They're not sure how much Abby knows that she learned from Lexi that she's not telling them about. And they're kind of digging at her a little bit. So now they're at the go-kart place. Man, I went to an indoor go-kart place about 3 weeks ago or something like that, maybe more. No, it was about 3 weeks ago. It was really cool. I mean, you got going pretty fast, but outdoor ones like this one are definitely the real deal. Anyways, so again, there's a helicopter flying overhead, basically patrolling the area, and the point there is that they don't want to blow this at the last minute, and yet it makes Lexi feel more uncomfortable instead of more safe. Um, Looks like I'm debating about tweaking that. I'm not sure what Holly that's about to change. I like why do I suddenly feel less safe better. So yeah, I don't like that line of Holly's. I'm not sure what it really referred to as a matter of fact. So here we go, little changes. And I wanted to make sure it was apparent that they were all alone there. Probably Holly or Paul or someone called ahead and arrange for them to be there by themselves, which I think probably comes through. It is always interesting, speaking of that, while I'm reading along, what you choose to show and tell and what you choose to have inferred. Obviously, you could have a scene where Paul calls up there and buys the place out for a couple hours or an hour or whatever, but I mean, what's the point? All right, so they have a little car race. I don't think I really changed anything there. I would say in general, scenes with action/description only probably get changed less because, again, it doesn't matter exactly how you write it, what words you use, as long as you know what the outcome is going to be. Literally, like the outcome of this race, who wins and who loses, but whether they skid or burn rubber or tear up the track, or it can make a little bit difference in not really too much now that I think about it. It's just purely writer's choice, and again, just don't interrupt the read with some crazy language. And also for me, that means a bunch of needless capitalizations that just sort of call attention to themselves. All right, so now they're going up there, and Gary's going with them. That happy to show you the top end. I'm falling. Not that I was ever in love with the line, but I definitely do not think it's a very good line of Holly. So then, as before, we go into the trailing car. I thought that would kind of be more interesting than hearing a bunch of exposition. And of course, we don't know exactly what all Holly is going to tell Gary, or what Lexi and or Holly is going to tell him. All right, we're up at Eagle Creek Escape, sponsored by Eagle Creek. Maybe they would house us while we were filming up there. They do have some nice cabins. So when they get up there, Gary has learned some stuff. Larry doesn't feel like he's learned much. So he's literally, well, not literally, but he's falling out of the loop. And I think that's part of his motivation. I kind of just thought of this as I'm reading this and thinking about it. But that's probably part of his motivation for deciding to go with Lexi. What do you think? Leave a comment, subscribe, like, watch my movie The Key on Amazon Prime. Watch The End of Art on YouTube for free. Check out my YouTube channel. There's a bunch of wacky stuff there. So this whole thing about the timeline and how soon Holly has to leave, trust me when I say that this is an evolution, trying to figure out what makes the most sense from, the ticking bomb, not literally, but, the clock is ticking, how soon Holly has to leave, how that drives her decisions. And I don't know. I think I was kind of happy about this when I was writing it. But having said that, I know I change who sees who, how long they see him for, if they exchange words, how quick Holly really has to leave, what is the big impetus for her to leave. Is it a big enough driver? Is it a big enough reason? Because that's always a big thing. And I think I thought about it early on in this, but then I think I kind of lost sight of it. And I'm not going to spoil anything, but just put a pin in that because that may change. So Gary tells Larry that she's a U.S. Marshal. And that doesn't have anything to do with Larry's decision, I don't think. I think, he does it, maybe he does it a little because he had felt left out, but he just does it because he thinks it's the right thing. Obviously, at this point, there's no thought that something bad's going to happen. He's going to get in danger. Anyone's going to get in danger. He just thinks being there for Lexi, even though he's not her boyfriend, he just does it because he thinks it's the right thing. And Gary, again, there's really no danger that he has to worry about, and yet he doesn't go with her. And saying I'm not sure why is kind of lame because I am the writer on this. But obviously that is a big, it's not a theme, but it is a big sort of turning point. It's a big maybe surprise because the boyfriend, the girlfriend are together and then whatever happens. But in this case, I thought fairly early that it was going to go the other way. And I may have asked before, what do you think about that decision? I still like it. Okay, so Holly is telling them that she's going to leave. I'm not really keeping track of what changes I have made here. Hopefully you are. And so he just wants to know, kind of for his sake, but kind of for the other's sake, that this is really what Lexi wants to do. She's not being pressured. And, he doesn't say anything about, is this safe or is it dangerous? He's just saying, are you sure this is really what you want to do? By this time, Gary and Abby are far enough away that they can't hear any of this conversation. Obviously, they can't see what's going on. They don't know what's going to happen inside the cabin. And then again, I have made that change where Holly and Rachel briefly see each other. And that is enough really to kind of piss Holly off, which may come into play later. So now they're in the cabin. And he remembers he's not supposed to say anything. And I don't know that Lexi says a good friend to trick her mom so much as just saying, well, he is a good friend because he came with me. And then Rachel, of course, takes that the wrong way. Holly is outside talking to Paul, who's just flying in, not really to relieve her, but just coming in. Do we really know why? That's a good question. I think he sort of has to head up this operation. So I think that's why he's there. Again, I don't know. I only wrote this. So he is again saying, hey, you've done your job. You've earned your next gig. So go and don't even give this a second thought, which obviously we know that she's going to. And again, this is, the break into two, the second act. And my thought was, hopefully correctly, that Holly is making a conscious decision to go on and do something new. She is, the protagonist. She's being proactive. Paul's not making her, although, he tells her to, he prods her, but she makes a decision. So now we're in the cabin with Abby and Gary, and the subtext here is that although Abby doesn't come out right out and say it, that she kind of feels a little guilty that she didn't go, but really she thinks that Gary should have, even though she doesn't really even allude to that necessarily. But Gary feeling guilty comes away with that impression. All right, so I've jumped ahead a little, and they're outside, and they're looking around. They can't find him. And then it's funny how you get caught up in small things, and I've already passed that. But I was wondering, would either of them logically or realistically have Holly's phone number? Would a teenager, if it was a mother or a father, would a teenager have the number of her best friend's mom or dad on her cell phone? Probably not. which is why I kind of thought about that. At some point, they're obviously going to get it, I think. But anyways, all right. So Paul is there. I don't think I've. I don't think I've changed too much there. But something is seriously wrong here. And this again, this exterior in the woods, where we see these two FBI agents. It's a question that I asked of myself: are these FBI agents? Are they, fake mob guys that are being fake dead, which was kind of wouldn't make any sense? Are they U.S. Marshals who have been killed? And I think the logic works that they are FBI people because basically Paul may... Gosh, now that I think about it, did Paul know that the FBI was sort of involved at this point? Probably. Gosh, that's an excellent question, Jack. I don't know. But he calls Noble and he talks to him as if, how much do you know about this? So they've got to have some... It's funny, I'm talking about this in the third person like I didn't write it and figure out the logic. Oops. But let me know what you think at this point, if the FBI kind of has usurped this from the U.S. Marshals and how much Paul knows and how much Paul doesn't know. And then, of course, by extension, Holly, she would know virtually nothing. And what does Rachel know? When she sees Holly just for a minute and then Holly leaves and Lexi and Larry come in, does she have this whole thing kind of choreographed, planned out, mapped out? Is she really the mastermind? The argument could be made that she is. Okay. So Paul talks to Gary and Abby. Gary, again, is kind of nervous. This is a point where, Paul tells him to go back in the cabin and they'll be safe. And then I ran in sort of this problem about Holly drove the SUV to the airport, so why would they have to go pick her up? And then I figured, well, Paul couldn't really drive it because I think they pass each other. But has it been long enough that they would have given that to someone else? Maybe someone else came in on the plane with Paul. I don't know. If those are the things where you can sometimes beat yourself up and try to make every single thing make sense. And then people see it in a movie and they go, why are they wasting time explaining that? It has nothing to do with the movie. I've had a few of those scenes in previous movies. In fact, in The Key, I had a couple of those and I just totally, literally after 10 years, I went back and watched it and I said, wow, I don't even need that scene. And I cut a couple scenes out. And that's what I put on Netflix. So now I'm looking at different locations and how far they are. Like how far is Wright City from the Eagle Creek escape? Because I didn't want to use... Well, I wanted to use real cities, but obviously you don't need to. But it does help me to get a sense of geography. But then it kind of traps you into... it's 48 miles away or 45, and then do you cheat and make it something to suit you, or do you just fabricate the cities, or what? So, but I do sort of like using real cities, not Gotham City or something like that. Okay, so Holly, wow, I'm really getting behind here. Okay, so this is another kind of sticky point. Obviously, a true U.S. Marshal would not even consider taking these two kids with her if she thought there was any danger, or even if she didn't, right? But we all know that would not be any fun in terms of the movie. So it's a combination. They have to convince her, and B, she has to have a reason why she takes them. And I've alluded to this when I've written this scene the first and second time, and I asked my audience, of which you are a part, the question, A, is it semi-realistic in a movie sense that she would take them with her? And B, do you understand why she's taking them with her? And C, do you think that makes sense or not? And so, again, I'm sort of getting into the weeds here a little bit with some of this dialogue in terms of how far away it is, and can they get there, and who's going to go with her, and is she going to tell Paul? Is Paul going to get on board with that? Obviously not. What happens when she shows up there with the kids? What's the FBI going to say? So, as I've said many times, I've tried to make this script relatively simple in the plot, and I guess this would maybe go to show you how convoluted some of my other scripts have been, because at least at the outset I was really trying to make this kind of streamlined and not a bunch of, not necessarily subplots, but a bunch of not even double crosses, but just trying to make everything make sense without just it being super linear and just like blah, 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 blah. So I guess that's typical. You get into situations and you go, well, it's gotta happen like this for the story to have most impact, and yet is it realistic enough that the audience isn't going to throw up their collective hands and like, oh my gosh, what is this guy doing? This movie is so stupid. Gosh, I watched a movie, about 10 minutes of a movie called Jolt on Amazon last night. It was so bad. About 10 minutes of voiceover. Oh, it was so bad. Violent and all right, so now we do get to the point where, this has got to happen, and so Holly is going with the if, and what if is always an excellent way to write a movie. So if you're going, you've got to do exactly what I say, 1,000%, and Holly's basically telling them you're not going to do anything, you're just going to be sitting around doing nothing. Abby's 1,000,000%, and then Holly turns to Gary, who is kind of the linchpin here, knowing that he's more hesitant, which, again, hopefully that works and doesn't make him into like a wimp or something. He's just, I don't know, he could be sort of a macho guy, but he holds back for whatever reason. And so Abby answers for him, basically saying that you don't have to worry because he's not going to do anything. And Abby kind of feels bad, so she has that nothing wrong with being cautious. Gary's like, don't, whatever, 1,000,000%. And there we go. We ended the day. I was a little ahead of writing where I was talking, so I didn't see the very last thing I wrote. But just a lot of tweaking on day 38 of a screenwriter's journey and a screenplay's journey. I was thinking about changing the name, as I've mentioned before, but I've exported a lot of the videos with the other one, so I'll just leave it like that. Anyways, thanks for joining me. I hope you're learning something, or again, if you're a beginner screenwriter or just are like super daunted by, how do I even write it? And not by any means is this the way to write it, but this is the way I do it. So I hope you're enjoying it. And if you happen to be a seasoned or semi-seasoned, whether you're professional or amateur like myself, I guess semi-professional, I don't know what if you are like watching this and say, get on with it. Why do you write like this? But leave a comment, let me know, and tell everyone you know, literally tell everyone you know, and we'll get this up to 1 billion views. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye.